A young boy named Tomoya Sadashima felt incredibly light and serene. It was as if a bright light was not only shining, but also penetrating into his very soul, warming him from within. It was incredibly peaceful, and Tomoya tried to understand where he was. After all, nothing like this in his life as an ordinary office clerk had never happened before. Then Tomoya remembered in horror how he had been hit by a truck at a tremendous speed when he was trying to cross the road. And absolutely, he should have died from such a collision. But how could that be, since his arms and legs were still in place and moreover, even his cheap suit was not torn anywhere? Tomoya wondered if he was really dead, and this was all just the last fantasy in his head before the void. But suddenly a bright flash flashed nearby, which really scared the office clerk. And then appeared a girl so beautiful that she looked more like some kind of goddess. The stranger immediately asked if his name was really Tomoya Sadashima. The guy didn't understand what was going on and replied that it was him. After that, the girl started moving strangely as if she was performing some kind of ritual. But then something unimaginable happened. The beautiful stranger fell to the ground and began to sob while saying that she was truly sorry. The astonished Tomoya didn't understand at all what was happening, and it made it even more frightening. The girl stated that she was truly very sorry and didn't even know how else to apologize. And then inexplicably for what, inquired if Tomoya was hungry. The guy decided that the girl was sick about something and needed to find out. Tomoya asked why she kept apologizing and what was even going on here. Fine, stranger apologized a few more times and promised to explain the whole situation, and then offered to settle down at the table. The girl quickly poured a fragrant and warming tea and immediately explained that she is one of the goddesses who rule other worlds. And in general, she is called the goddess of the universe. During the conversation, the goddess stated that Tomoya was actually dead at the moment, but he shouldn't have died at that age. All of this happened because of a gross mistake by the leadership. And the god who made the tragic blunder had already been exiled to hell. The goddess of the universe became convinced that she tried her best to correct this mistake when she noticed it and bring Tomoya back. But in the process, she realized that if she did so, the balance of the cosmic axis would collapse, and it would lead to a real catastrophe. Tomoya didn't get too caught up in the divine nuances and simply inquired if he couldn't go home. To which the girl goddess shook her head negatively. Tomoya didn't even realize what pissed him off more: the realization of what had happened or the absolute calmness of the goddess. And the guy cried out, how could he even understand all of this? Tomoya started excitedly asking how long he would have to wait to return to his homeworld. The serene blonde replied completely calmly that he would only have to wait for about 400 years, and there was nothing wrong with that. Tomoya started yelling that it was an eternity and why the number of years was so huge in the first place. But the goddess of the universe tried to calm him down and said that since Tomoya was now dead, time would go much faster for him. Tomoya demanded the goddess of creation to do something for him, because he absolutely does not want to be dead and wait for so many years. The girl stated that she could actually do something, and so Tomoya might not worry so much. The goddess of creation explained that she could rebirth Tomoya a completely different world without losing many years. Boy, immediately he decided to clarify exactly what she meant. The very strange goddess explained that she meant reincarnation, and after that Tomoya would enter a fantasy world where individual abilities are tied to his statuses and where his strength and level would also be an important attribute. The goddess then stated that Tomoya's home world was on the brink of destruction and whether Tomoya would feel good when he realized he was going to return to a nearly dead world. The goddess then suggested that the office clerk be sent to a healthier world that is many thousands of years different from where Tomoya lived. In this new world, the level of culture would be much lower than on Earth. But she will, with the help of divine powers, endow Tomoya with cheater skills that will prevent him from dying in an unfamiliar place. Tomoya decided that even so, it would be nice to have such an airbag. After all, his past life had not been particularly good. But the goddess of the universe corrected the young lad and informed him that if he had not died so tragically in the accident and was still alive, he would have won 1 billion yen in the lottery in 3 days. After that, Tomoya could have become almost the greatest millionaire ever and would have acquired a personal harem with him, and he would have died only at the age of 150. Tomoya cried after this discovery, for this was the life he had always dreamed of. Upset Guy decided that now he has no other choice, and probably he should agree to the proposal of the goddess of the universe. The unconventional goddess rejoiced and suggested that he start immediately. But Tomoya asked to wait a little while. The guy wondered why this strange goddess is in such a hurry. After all, she wants him to be reborn and leave her as soon as possible. Tomoya angrily asked what the goddess of creation was really hiding from him. After all, the strange feeling of being deceived did not leave him for a second. The goddess of the universe replied in a trembling voice that she didn't know what Tomoya was talking about at all. Judging from her reaction, she was trivializing a lie, and Tomoya once again asked what was even going on here. The goddess of the universe started repeating again about how sorry she was about the situation, and all this only confirmed that she was really hiding something, and it was very strange. The young goddess then explained that rebirth into another world only happens once every 1,000 years, and in this new world, there had been a continuous war for more than half a century. As a result of this war, the Demon King had repeatedly invaded the human world and completely ravaged it. Tomoya asked if he correctly understood that it was the goddess of creation who was responsible for this fantasy world. The office clerk's assumption turned out to be correct, and the goddess confirmed it. The magic of the universe explained that if a supreme god like her interfered with any world, the cosmic axis would be destroyed. But if she does nothing, in that case her beloved world will be destroyed, and so she wants to ask Tomoya for help. The experienced office worker has often faced deception and is skeptical about such a request. But eventually Tomoya realized that he really had no choice, and so he promised to help the goddess of the universe. The girl thanked in advance and explained that she would endow Tomoya with the best cheating skills to begin with, but in order to do so, he needed to get down on one knee for a few seconds. The guy immediately complied with the strange goddess request, and at this moment, the young goddess suddenly sank her lips into the young lad. After her unexpected kiss, the goddess of the universe said that Tomoya's lips were very soft and sweet. Tomoya himself was very surprised and asked why she did it and why she immediately changed somehow. The goddess of the universe reminded of her desire to give Tomoya cheater skills, and now after this magical kiss, he became one of the strongest people in the world. And since Tomoya has become incredibly strong, he can now easily save this fantasy world from the Demon King. At that, the goddess of creation admitted that she was aware of Tomoya's innocence, and it was his first real kiss. The boy was immediately embarrassed by this, and began to assure not particularly skillfully that he had already kissed many times. Tomoya then asked that if she had already finished transferring cheater abilities to him, and since that was the case, it would be a good idea to get up to speed quickly. The goddess of universe agreed to continue learning and suggested Tomoya say the word status. The surprised guy immediately repeated the desired word, and a translucent screen appeared in front of his face. Everything looked about the same as a normal computer action game. The goddess of creation explained that this status menu listed health points as well as magic energy points. Magic points are spent while using special skills. Generally, a normal person doesn't get many experience points, but Tomoya's body handles it 10 times better, and there is some cheating involved. The total number of special skills will increase over time. At the same time, it is worth noting that the strength indicator indicates how strong Tomoya is in battle. And the higher the rate, the more effectively you can fight. The goddess of creation further explained that Tomoya had a special blessing that she had graciously bestowed upon him. With this ability, there is an increase in the experience gained 10 times faster. There is also the ability to absorb skills, copy skills, absorb and copy magic, and skills are automatically determined. And in case Tomoya's vitality drops below 30%, his strength will increase by 25, and thanks to the detection ability, one can recognize any ability of others absolutely without being noticed. Tomoya recognized that with such an incredible set of abilities, he shouldn't have any problems, and the goddess's blessing does indeed make him an incredibly strong person. The divine girl confirmed Tomoya's peculiarity and admitted that it was the best explanation she could give in this situation. But Tomoya inquired that wasn't this all some sort of disorderly phenomenon. The goddess of the universe immediately changed the subject and advised him to immediately prepare for rebirth. Tomoya did not argue and agreed to continue the process. The office clerk then asked if there were any other secrets he had left that he had better learn immediately, but the the girl only laughed in response. And then the goddess of creation opened a magic portal into which Tomoya fell through. The boy tried to ask something else, but the goddess of the universe only wished good luck and farewell. After Tomoya's scream was heard far away, the goddess of the universe remembered that she had forgotten to say something important, but alas, it was too late. A few hours later, there was chaos and mayhem in a small settlement. Ruthless and brutal orcs destroyed the civilians of the village, feeling absolute impunity. The squad leader ordered the woman not to be killed and immediately carried her to the square in the center of the settlement. A huge orc general led the raiding party, and on his orders all the women they could find were gathered in the square. The orc general's subordinates asked why the women were not just killed like the others. But the vile orc general stated that he needed new children and had a weakness for female beauty. One of the captives, a young girl named Lucia of the White Wolf race, asked why they were being treated so cruelly. Lucia had always been very proud of the strength of her race, but without honest orcs treacherously attacked the settlement and were able to easily kill her brother, and she herself was too weak to give a decent fight back. Meanwhile, the vile orc general had already chosen his first victim from among the local girls. The girl begged for help and begged not to be touched, but that only gave the bloodthirsty creature pleasure. Lucia was able to find the courage and rushed to the rescue. The wolf girl tried to attack the ferocious orc, but the general easily dodged Lucia's inept throw and her blow came past. Losing her balance, the girl collapsed to the ground and found herself in a very disadvantageous position in front of the ferocious opponent. The orc general immediately turned his full attention to Lucia and grabbed the girl's leg. The orc recognized that Lucia was fast enough, but she needed to hide her aura during the attack. At the same time, the general was very surprised that the person in front of him was a member of the White Wolf race. Lucia desperately resisted the attack of the huge orc, but the general already felt the thirst for profit and only resented how noisy the girl was, although she would make an excellent pet for his harem. The vile leader of the orc squad stated that he had already chosen a victim for himself and left the rest of the women to his subordinates. Such generosity of the general caused cheers of approval from the entire squad, and at the same time horror in the eyes of the enslaved girls. Tomoya, who was watching what was happening, decided that the horrible monsters would not have time for entertainment, because he was going to kill all the demons of this world. The lightning-fast attack took the orc squad by surprise, and soon Tomoya, the newfound hero, drastically reduced the raider population. Many orcs didn't even have time to realize what exactly had happened and were immediately killed. No less surprised than the orcs was the wolf girl Lucia, who no longer hoped for salvation and prepared for the worst. But like a true hero, Tomoya said that now everything would be fine and there was no need to worry. Tomoya explained to the worried girl that he could be considered an ally. Meanwhile, the remaining orcs demanded that the boy tell them his name. But the angry Tomoya decided that there was no point in giving his name to those who were about to die anyway. The remaining angry orcs thought of nothing better than to immediately attack the impudent stranger and rushed off to meet their death. Tomoya repelled the attack with a lightning-fast strike, and then with a swift sweep of his arm, he cut off the orc's head. Tomoya sent the second orc to the same place where its kin was already, and was surprised that he just had to hit the monster lightly, and it was enough to crush its skull. Everything that was happening really confirmed that Tomoya had really gotten into another fantasy world where horrible monsters dwelled. The orc general ordered his subordinates to stay put and not engage in close combat with the stranger. The cocky orc declared that Tomoya shouldn't be happy just because he was able to kill a couple of his soldiers. Armed with a huge axe, the orc general decided to deal with the cocky fellow on his own. Tomoya wondered what kind of level this bulky guy might be, because he looked really impressive. Applying the skill of truth, Tomoya was able to determine that the orc general's combat strength was 550 units. And now it was clear exactly how the enemy orc was able to determine the degree of threat after Tomoya suppressed his power. In fact, Tomoya had purposely lowered his apparent level to avoid unnecessary trouble. That was why the orc general was so confident that he could easily destroy the insolent young man, and the fact that he was able to defeat a few soldiers was just luck. Tomoya was also confident in his strength and prepared to easily defeat the huge and ferocious opponent. It was for this purpose that he activated Isis Combat Artificial Intelligence. Tomoya then decided to provoke the orcs a bit and called them vile piglets. The ploy really had an effect on the ferocious monsters who were clearly not known for their restraint. A few of the most intemperate orcs were the first to receive the fatal blow of the sword. The force of the blow was so strong that some of them were chopped literally in half. From such mastery of Tomoya's blade, the rest of the orcs became bewildered. The orc general, feeling a surge of incredible rage, ordered his underlings to attack Tomoya with magic. Instantly, a fire spear rushed towards the young hero along with an ice spear, as well as a lightning spear and a wind blade. But Tomoya was completely unconcerned about the possible damage as he activated the Goddess of Creation's blessing that possessed automatic absorption of any magic. The status menu reported the successful absorption of magic. At the same time, Tomoya noticed that the number of magic attributes he could use had increased. In addition to the others, the Ice Coffin attribute, Ice Storm, Electric Ball, Lightning Cannonade, and Cyclone Wind attribute had been added. After repelling the orcs' magic attack, Tomoya asked quite calmly if the orcs had anything else they could surprise. The next moment, Tomoya decided to try out his new attribute and used Cyclone Wind magic. The incredible power literally swept away the heavy bodies of the ferocious monsters, causing them considerable damage. Tomoya was surprised at how strong the high-level magic was and realized that he could now feel completely safe with such powerful skills. The orc general roared at his mage, who was convinced of the young hero's weakness. The frightened mage immediately began to justify himself and stated that he had absolutely determined Tomoya's insignificant level. The orc general ordered him to immediately determine the lad's real level and explain what kind of power he possessed. The frightened mage did the right thing this time and declared in a trembling voice that Tomoya's combat power was a huge amount. The orc general was truly furious, for at this moment Tomoya continued to destroy his squad. The general demanded an immediate response from the mage and in a clear voice. In the end, the orc mage answered, himself in such disbelief, that the combat power of the young hero is 220,000. The orc mage began to assure that there could be no mistake in his analysis, and this young fellow's power was indeed 220,000 units. The orcs were shocked by this discovery, for it seemed impossible for an ordinary person. Tomoya asked the battle artificial intelligence why Isis had revealed its true power. Turns out Isis did it for the sake of making the opponents fall into utter despair. The orcs really began to tremble with fear and could not understand at all how such a powerful man could even exist, because no one could compare to him in battle. But the orc general continued to force his wards to not give in to panic. The general stated that they hadn't used their main trump card yet, and that piqued Tomoya's interest. Isis suggested that most likely the orcs were going to use a summoning spell. Tomoya wondered if it was worth stopping them. The artificial battle intelligence explained that compared to the Sacred Mountain Emperor they had recently destroyed, all opponents were just useless trash. With that, Isis reported how she had lowered Tomoya's level again before the rescued woman could notice the hero's real strength. Such care and resourcefulness pleased Tomoya a lot, for Isis was really solving a lot of important issues. Meanwhile, the orc general called for a zombie dragon to appear from the darkness and was confident that this powerful monster could defeat Tomoya. From the fire flash, a huge Cyclops zombie dragon possessing a strength of 6,400 units did indeed appear. The orc general cheered and promised Tomoya a swift demise and transformation into the undead. Artificial intelligence Isis explained that it was an extinct species of dragon that died 5,000 years ago. And after becoming a zombie, this dragon would be several times stronger than normal. Tomoya pondered over his capabilities, for the abominable zombie dragon really looked too serious an opponent. The zombie dragon suddenly began to shake and growl, and Tomoya wondered what was happening to it. Isis explained that thanks to Tomoya's dragon authority ability, he was able to completely override the control of the summoned creature. The boy was surprised that such an ability affected zombies as well. Tomoya asked the dragon what he would do next, and would he really go against his master. The dragon proved to be an obedient creature and easily submitted to Tomoya's control magic. The next moment, the zombie dragon attacked the unsuspecting orcs. The frightened orcs began to convince the zombie dragon that they were not his enemies and to flee. But the mighty winged dragon continued to focus all his attention only on the orcs. The orcs, because of their slowness, did not have time to dodge the swift attacks of the zombie dragon. The mighty summoned monster literally crushed the frightened orcs with its paws and continued its hunt. Tomoya, watching all this, decided that all this is very bad, since such a dangerous monster awakened after a very long sleep, and therefore it would be better to return to another world. Tomoya began the reverse summoning process to completely eliminate the zombie dragon. The orc general who had miraculously escaped was trying to understand what had just happened in the first place, for he had not counted on such a thing. After that, the hero Tomoya decided to finish off the orc general and drew his blade. But at this point, the girls asked Tomoya to stop, which surprised the guy. Lucia and the rest of the rescued girls declared their desire to personally finish off the orc general. Tomoya, of course, understood the anger that the girls had and so decided to give them the opportunity to retaliate. Tomoya pulled out a whole bunch of different weapons from his magical vault for the girls to choose from. Tomoya noticed the confusion of the women and invited them to choose what they liked, but asked them to be careful not to hurt themselves. Meanwhile, the orc general had already realized the pain ahead of him and began to beg for mercy. All the orcs' pleas went unheeded, and the first girl threw her fierce punch, followed by the other offended women. Tomoya calmly watched the revenge process and suggested that Lucia keep up with the others. Lucia felt unsure of herself, and Tomoya suggested that she take an ordinary short sword. Feeling the weight of the metal in her hand, the girl instantly flashed with righteous anger and wished to avenge her dead brother. After Lucia killed the orc general, Tomoya decided to burn all the bodies of the vile creatures in one place. The young boy noticed how upset Lucia felt, because even though she was angry, it was difficult for her to commit murder. Tomoya apologized for giving Lucia the weapons, for it would have been better if he had ended things himself. But Lucia only thanked the interview for saving the town, and called everything else not so important, because without Tomoya's help they would all have died. Then the excited girl offered the hero to spend the night in the settlement. Unexpectedly, Tomoya noticed how much Lucia resembled the girl who died in the car accident. And the resemblance was amazing. Tomoya scrutinized Lucia's face so closely that he even caused her some embarrassment. Tomoya explained to Lucia that she just looked a lot like an acquaintance of his, but unfortunately she had been dead for more than 10 years. After that, the mysterious hero decided to go to rest. But suddenly Lucia called the guy Tomoya and asked him to wait for a while. The guy immediately remembered his tragically deceased friend, because only she called him so in a former life. Excited Tomoya asked if Lucia was Sayaka. And this time the girl admitted that it was really her and just at first doubted whether Tomoya was really the one in front of her. Looking at his longtime friend, Tomoya was still a little doubtful, because now she had wolf ears and a tail. Sayaka asked that if Tomoya was not happy about their meeting and had completely forgotten her. But the guy admitted that it all seemed very strange, and he obviously didn't expect this. The girl only laughed in response and explained how she was just as subject to rebirth as Tomoya himself. Sayaka sadly looked at her friend and asked if he had died like her, because that was the only way to be in this fantasy world. Tomoya confessed his death and suggested to talk somewhere else. Sayaka immediately noticed how much Tomoya had grown, since he was much shorter during their last meeting. Tomoya looked at the girl and realized how much she had grown and looked better. The former friends moved to Lucia's cozy cabin and continued their sweet conversation. The girl was incredibly excited and once again asked if the guy was really the Tomoya she knew in her previous life. Tomoya explained that there could be no mistake and that they really knew each other in a past life, even though 15 years had passed since then. Lucia said that Tomoya hadn't changed that much in that time, which was why she had her doubts, because he still looked very young, just like in the old days. But Tomoya disagreed that he was very young and admitted that he was now 41 years old. But Lucia insisted and suggested that the boy look in the mirror to see for himself what she was saying. Tomoya was very surprised, for from the mirror a younger and prettier version of himself looked at him, and yet he had changed little in all the years he had lived. Everything looked like some kind of visual filter, but it was really. Tomoya then decided that his appearance wasn't really that important and asked Lucia how exactly she had gotten into this fantasy world and why she now had such a specific dog-like appearance. Lucia clarified that she was of the wolf species, not the dog species, and didn't really remember very much about how exactly she had gotten into this world, and the memories of her past life just came back to her at some point. At the very beginning of this life, Lucia was adopted by a strange family, for she found herself in the body of a little orphan. And where her real parents are remains a mystery, but the new family was really good, and they are the ones she considers her birth parents. Sayaka explained that when she appeared in this world with her memories, she felt herself in Lucia's new body, and so began her new life journey. Then the girl told that unfortunately 3 members of her family had died, and they were very kind to her, so they gave her a home and what she could call her family. Lumia then asked Tomoya to tell her story of getting into this world. The guy thought that he absolutely did not want to bring this girl into his life, but now he hardly had any choice left. Tomoya admitted that this was actually his first day in this new world. Lucia was incredibly surprised, because none of that went along with the kind of immense power Tomoya possessed. The guy explained how he had unexpectedly found himself not far from this village, and that was why he was able to step in and help. The girl asked what Tomoya intended to do in the future, and the fellow told me that it seems he had some special purpose, and so he would travel until he fulfilled it. Lucia immediately explained that the locals couldn't stay here any longer and asked to escort them to the nearest town. She said that the journey would take at least a month and that the women would not be able to reach the town on their own. Lucia explained that the beastmen were certainly strong enough to deal with the monster, but they couldn't compete with the bandits. And the road to the city can't be safe, and so they will be doomed without protection. Meanwhile, the beastmen are forced to hunt wild animals for food, and the nearby forest is full of dangerous monsters. Lucia confesses that she likes this village very much and considers it her home, which is why she wants to save all its inhabitants. Lucia promised to reward Tomoya generously if he agreed to escort the locals to the town. The boy didn't quite understand what kind of reward she was talking about. But Lucia immediately explained that the reward for Tomoya would be herself, since she was willing to be a faithful slave for her master. Tomoya did not expect that this was how things would turn out and asked how Lucia could even suggest such a thing. But the girl didn't explain anything more and just kissed her protector. From the girl's unexpected act, Tomoya felt his face instantly become red and could barely restrain himself from running out of the room. But Lucia explained that she was now 28 years old, which meant that she was already a mature girl. Therefore, she now likes Tomoya not as a friend at all, but as a man. Tomoya was not too happy about this revelation and reminded the girl that it was a very responsible step if she really wanted to be together. Although at the same time, the guy decided that it would be very rude to just deny such a beautiful girl her wish. Tomoya realized that his every action would greatly affect Lucia, and so now he would have to make a difficult choice. And finally, the agitated boy replied that he could not accept such an offer from Lucia at the moment. Tomoya explained that he doesn't really want intimacy without commitment, although he actually likes Lucia very much now and certainly liked her in his past life. But Lucia was not even going to give up and offered Tomoya to make her his wife. At that, the girl looked as if she had been waiting for this all her life. Lucia promised that she would succeed and become a worthy wife for Tomoya. After all, she knows absolutely everything about him since she has read his diary. Lucia told how she found out Tomoya's preferences thanks to the diary, what kind of girls he likes and how he dreams of being together, and she also read about Tomoya's most secret desires. The young hero was much more embarrassed than angry and stated that everything written in the diary was just a silly fantasy. Lucia decided to continue the frank conversation, confessed that she likes the same things as Tomoya, and that is why she wants to be together and serve her protector and call him her dear and beloved husband. Tomoya could not find a place for himself from embarrassment and pondered how strange it all looked. But then Tomoya guessed that because of the specific abilities received from the goddess of the universe, Lucia wants to become his slave. It was the alpha male ability that allowed him to seduce and maximize his attraction to girls. Tomoya asked if Lucia really wanted to become his slave and obey all his orders. The girl wordlessly confirmed her desire, and immediately a message appeared confirming the capture of Lucia's beastman. To his surprise, Tomoya realized that at this moment, he had an incredible feeling of ultimate pleasure that Lucia herself was also experiencing. Thus, their feelings and sensations were merging together due to skill. Instantly, the menu reported the acquisition of the passive skill spiritual connection. Due to this skill, the amount of experience a slave gained was doubled, and Tomoya felt his strength begin to increase due to the proximity. At that, the guy thought that whether such pleasant sensations he was getting only because of his ability. As a result, Tomoya recognized that he was no longer the sweet girl he had known before, but a more mature and open woman. Lucia herself was incredibly happy and stated that she had always dreamed of being one with Tomoya, and that in the future they would always be together. After that, Tomoya again received a message to immediately activate the effect of the Goddess of Creation's blessing. Then a special skill, Useful Seed, was obtained, which increased the slave girl's characteristics by 1%. Tomoya was as happy as the unrestrained Lucia, and it seemed as if their first night had lasted an eternity. The morning that came seemed to Tomoya the most beautiful he had ever had in his life. After all, it was his first time with a woman, and even more so he spent an entire night in intimacy. By staying with Lucia together throughout the night, Tomoya was able to obtain a special skill that enhanced his seed. With this skill, the slave's basic characteristics were increased by 1%. Also, the fertilization rate was controlled by turning the seed into energy. All of this was something like magical contraception, and so Tomoya could not worry about the consequences of intimacy. The customs of the New World surprised Tomoya, but even so, he was happy to have Lucia as his slave. It was all the more pleasing to realize that the girl had willingly taken this step and also received a special skill. Tomoya thought that no matter how it was, but last night was really incredible, because he didn't even expect something like this to happen to him when he entered this world. And now he would always remember his first day, or rather his first night, in the fantasy world. Of course, the first time for anyone should be special and memorable. Therefore, Tomoya was even more happy, because he had it exactly as it should be. When Tomoya first went to explore the surrounding lands, he was suddenly attacked by a flying monster. Tomoya was of course frightened, for in his previous life, he certainly had not encountered ferocious dragons that were also trying to eat him. While trying to flee from the flying dragon, Tomoya slipped on something and crashed to the ground. Only after landing hard did the young hero realize that everything around him was drenched in blood. The situation was heating up with every passing second, and the ferocious creature was already coming close. Tomoya, feverishly trying to find a solution to the problem, automatically appealed for help to the Lord. A strange voice instantly responded and reported the successful installation of the Goddess of Creation's blessing, and then began gathering information for the Master. After which, the same strange voice reported an emergency situation and activated the defense systems and restored the mental systems. At the same time, the maximum damage, physical power, magic ability, and Tomoya's survivability were increased. The voice confirmed the readiness of the necessary skills and the completion of the forced activation. Meanwhile, the flying dragon decided to finally finish off its victim and used a flame attack. At this moment, Tomoya had time to remember the few things that had happened in his short life, but to his surprise, he did not feel the incredible heat of the flames. Everything happened completely differently, and the dragon itself was defeated and lying on the ground. The same pleasant female voice reported that the defense system was working, which helped repel the dragon's blow. Following the desire to avenge his stupid situation, Tomoya hurriedly struck the immobilized monster, but the invisible counselor reported 0 level and subsequent information processing. After that, the same pleasant voice activated the blade attack skill, double strike, and a sword aura appeared around Tomoya's hand. But at this moment, the flying demon came to his senses and tried to fix his difficult situation. Tomoya, keen on learning new skills, did not expect such a sudden movement of the dragon, and so the voice reported the forced activation of the analysis skill. Just a few seconds later, the analysis skill brought the result and pointed out the vulnerable spot of the flying monster. Tomoya decided not to miss such a good chance and punched through the dragon. After accelerating properly, Tomoya showed himself like an experienced warrior and struck one precise and decisive blow. Fortunately for the young hero, the blow came exactly where the virtual advisor advised, and it stunned the fearsome dragon. But for all the power and accuracy of the blow, it turned out that there was still not enough damage for a complete victory, and the system instantly activated an increase in the maximum damage. Finally, the extra damage finished the job, and the flying monster let out its last cry. Tomoya did not immediately believe in his success, and still feared that the dragon would attack him again. But the virtual advisor reported that the enemy showed no signs of life, and then the emergency status was lifted and a report on what had happened was being prepared. After that, the virtual assistant reported the accrual of experience points, and thanks to the blessing of the goddess of creation, the experience gained was doubled, and Tomoya immediately reached the 31st level. He received the title of Hercules, which added 5% to any attack, and also received the title of Superhuman, which allowed you to get 3 or more levels at a time and automatically increased combat power by 10%. Tomoya also gained the Transcendent skill, which increased his overall combat power by 3%. Among the passive skills added Stamina Recovery, Automatic Recovery of Magic Power, and Super Recovery. And the skills gained from the title of Dragon Slayer allowed for a Flaming Strike and greatly increased physical support. Tomoya was surprised at how much he had gained with just one victory, although it was clear that if it wasn't for the mysterious voice of the assistant, he would have been dead by now. At the same time, the hero noticed how all of his wounds instantly healed and meant he had not only become much stronger. Only now Tomoya realized how valuable was the gift of the goddess of creation, and apparently this voice of the assistant, also the work of the goddess. The voice instantly reacted to Tomoya's thoughts and confirmed all his assumptions. Tomoya wondered who was always talking to him and why he didn't see anyone around him. But the voice, still in a calm manner, explained that she was just a support system created by the goddess of the universe. And the task of this system is to help its master feel comfortable in a new uncharted world. Tomoya felt something strange in that voice, and it seemed to be something like an artificial intelligence. The voice immediately confirmed its artificial origin by the hands of the goddess of creation. At the same time, the virtual assistant has no physical body, only data and intelligence. Tomoya understood the main points and asked if the virtual assistant had its own name. But a pleasant voice replied that it had no such designation and no one had given it a name. Tomoya decided that it would be very inconvenient to constantly call the assistant a support system from the goddess of creation. The system offered the host to choose any suitable name for it as he saw fit. Tomoya pondered over some suitable and simple name. After thinking for a few minutes, Tomoya suggested the name Isis, and since the system had a female voice, it would be a very suitable name. The system approved of the chosen name and thanked its master. And then the system announced that it could now be addressed by name as all its protocols had already been quickly reconfigured. Tomoya then asked Isis what this whole system was actually capable of. Isis immediately replied that the question did not sound clear and there was no definite answer. And it would take 88 hours to explain all the capabilities, so it was necessary to specify the question in order to reduce the answer time. Tomoya was surprised at such a long answer and decided that he could hardly listen to so many hours. Isis herself then suggested that the host clarify the current situation, and it was quite helpful. Tomoya asked for an explanation of where they were at the moment. Isis explained that they were currently at the top of Dragon Mountain, the largest of the Drago Mountains, in the coldest region of the Castral continent. None of this told Tomoya anything, but the mysterious names appealed to him. Tomoya then inquired about the slain dragon, for it was obvious that this monster was far from the first level. Ishida confirmed his master's assumptions and told him that such creatures were usually found in Ruhoho Cave and that one needed at least 99th level to encounter them. Ruhoho Cave itself is one of the most dangerous caves on the continent, and many adventurers gather powerful groups to hike into it. And so far, none of the adventure groups that have gone have been successful, and almost all of the hikers have died. Tomoya was horrified at such prospects and resented how the goddess of creation had thrown him with his first level into such dangerous lands. But Isis disagreed with his master and reminded him that the goddess of creation was known for her foresight. And so it is easiest to imagine that the goddess simply did not consider all possible factors to move Tomoya. Isis has recognized that the goddess of creation is very powerful, but alas, this is easily counted against her amazing stupidity. Therefore, the goddess of creation is very bad at thinking through all her actions. Tomoya decided that such frankness of the system is rather rude, but apparently it is a necessary truth. Isis apologized for the unpleasant information, but also reminded him that it was foolish of the goddess to endanger her master's life like that. After all, if not for a fortunate coincidence, Tomoya might have died on the first day of his new life. Tomoya agreed with Ishido and suggested to leave the area quickly before any more monsters came to meet him. After all, relying on luck alone is not the right thing to do. Before leaving, Isis recommended taking the defeated dragon with her and set the skill, Magic Crystal. Isis explained that you just need to point at the dragon and say the word generate. Tomoya obediently repeated the system's instructions, and the dragon's huge body instantly turned into a glowing stream of light. Isis reported the generated glass-class demon, Emerald Dragon Kaiser. Tomoya didn't really understand the specifics of this unusual process and asked for more details. Isis explained that in this world, defeated monsters are crystallized, and the crystals themselves are later sold for processing into goods. And this particular dragon was a high-level demon, so its magic power encapsulated in the crystal is very dense. It could be used as a source of magic power for magic weapons, and it could also serve as a material to create weapons and various tools. It all looked very functional and convenient, and the crystal itself reminded Tomoya of an expensive piece of jewelry. Isis reported that Tomoya could bring the dragon's body to the Adventurers Guild and sell it for materials. In addition, the already crystallized dragon could be restored with regeneration magic. It all sounded fantastic, and Tomoya couldn't stop marveling at the new knowledge. Tomoya decided that the dragon body itself would be too heavy to carry and suggested to his virtual assistant to leave the monster in the form of a crystal. At the same time, Tomoya inquired how long he would have to walk and whether Isis could explain how long or how much in distance it would take to reach the nearest normal settlement. Isis answered without hesitation that the nearest settlement was about 1,000 kilometers to the south. Such an answer stunned Tomoya, for that distance seemed incredible, especially for traveling on foot. A few minutes later, the virtual assistant reported the discovery of hostile individuals. And since no escape routes had been found, the emergency status was activated. Tomoya was once again convinced that his premonition never failed him. Tomoya was instantly surrounded by a group of dragons that included a 35th level soldier dragon with 2,000 units of strength, a 40th level great red dragon with nearly 6,000 units of strength, a 42nd level great horn dragon with 6,500 units of strength, and an 88th level sapphire dragon Kaiser with nearly 9,000 units of strength. And the most important in this group of dragons was the Sacred Dragon Emperor of 118th level with a strength of 26,000 units. It was obvious to Tomoya that all of these opponents were much stronger than him, especially when put together. But to his surprise, he was practically unafraid except for a slight trembling in his body. Isis hurriedly cautioned her new master and explained that the attack level of the Dragon Emperor mentioned earlier was much higher than all the other individuals combined. But Tomoya decided that he must not let this evil monster win, and he as an incredible hero sent by the goddess of the universe herself would surely prevail. After quickly converging with the dragon squad, Tomoya tried to inflict maximum damage to the opponents. The meeting of several powerful forces caused a tremendous energy surge, from which Tomoya himself almost lost consciousness. Isis reported in a confident voice that there were no signs of life in the opponents, so the emergency status was cancelled and a report was prepared. Tomoya, of course, did not know all the secrets the goddess of creation had prepared for him, and he only muttered about his victory over the dragons. The status menu reported that the Guiding Star skill had been obtained and also acquired a passive skill, a hidden status that increases luck by 9,999%. Isis also announced that all experience gained would be increased fivefold due to the Goddess Blessing effect. After this victory, Tomoya had reached level 71, and the virtual assistant offered to review all the skills and statuses obtained in the journal menu, where one could study the details of all the improvements. Tomoya didn't want to waste time studying the complicated wording of the numerous skills and upgrades, so he decided that he was strong enough to continue the dangerous journey. Isis confirmed his master's expectations and explained that Tomoya was able to increase his strength considerably thanks to his victory over the Sacred Dragon Emperor. The tired hero himself was only glad that he had just survived such an unexpected encounter. Isis recommended the hero to gather all the corpses of the defeated dragons as soon as possible, but Tomoya asked if they could not just leave them. The virtual assistant immediately called that not the wisest decision. And if the master just leaves the monster's body without crystallizing it, there's a good chance that the monsters will become horrible undead. And if that happens, the creature will become more aggressive and dangerous than before. Tomoya was horrified at such a prospect and was afraid to even imagine how dangerous the Dragon Emperor would become in undead status. Isis hastened to reassure his master and said that at the moment, he had no equal in monster power and could rest assured of his safety. This sounded very optimistic, but Tomoya still decided to leave these dangerous places as soon as possible. Isis explained that time in a magical vault stops the moment an item is placed in it for storage. Therefore, there was no need to fear that something would spoil, even if it was the corpse of a monster. You can also optionally speed up the time for any selected item. In the following days during his quest, Tomoya discovered ancient ruins and decided to explore them. There was a faint magical signal emanating from the ruins themselves, and that was what piqued his interest in the long-abandoned place the most. When Tomoya went inside the half-destroyed ancient temple, he found a dragon statue that was very similar to the dragons he had killed. Inspecting the beautifully crafted figure, the young hero suddenly heard a strange voice thanking him. Tomoya was surprised and immediately began to look around the unfamiliar room. But the mysterious voice asked him not to worry and explained that the communication was through the dragon sculpture. The voice explained that apparently here who Tomoya had recently fought with was the Emperor of the Sacred Mountain. And a few days ago, a whole army of dragons appeared and killed his comrades. And this place was exactly where the Sacred Mountain Dragon Emperor ate all of his opponents. After that he was cursed, and the curse covered the entire mountain, and the killing of his comrades began at this place. The Emerald Dragon and Sapphire Dragon were no exceptions. The voice thanked Tomoya for letting their throats die in battle. In doing so, the dragons decided to leave the jewels in this place for their heirs, and so they grant Tomoya strength, power over dragons, and the ability to fly. The voice continued to thank the excited hero and promised all sorts of rewards. But Tomoya explained that everything was actually fine and there was no need to reward him at all. But the voice continued to insist and said that as the head of the family and father of his children, he was obliged to thank Tomoya, and it would be proper to accept the deserved treasures of the ancient temple. Tomoya decided not to argue, and the voice from the statue explained that his time was running out, and lastly, he would like to know the name of a worthy man. Tomoya did not hesitate to introduce himself, and the voice only had time to say that it was a wonderful name, and then said goodbye apparently forever. After walking around the ancient temple, Tomoya was able to find a stockpile of weapons and various tools lying around a huge chest. Inside the chest itself was a strange sword that looked like a Japanese katana. Isis explained that it was a heaven-given incredible blade that cut through everything without touching anything. The sword represents the void reached by the exclusion of everything and nothing. Tomoya did not understand anything from the assistant's explanation, and then Isis said that this weapon was a valuable relic of the indestructible gods, and with it, Tomoya's attack power would increase incredibly. The heavenly indestructible blade ignored armor and magic, while increasing attack power by adding a new ability or magic skill. Tomoya then noticed the strange orb and decided that this item would definitely not be stronger than the blade. Isis quickly analyzed the supreme jewel of the gods and determined that the mind of the ancients under the influence of divine forces for eternity merged with the mind of Balor, and the concentration of power allows it to reach its peak. After obtaining this jewel, Tomoya was granted several skills and statuses, detailed descriptions of which are uploaded to the database. After finishing analyzing the new skills and statuses, Isis reported that the description of the skill, "The woman you love won't run away," had been discovered. Tomoya was surprised at such a nonsense title and asked what it even meant. After visiting the temple, Tomoya tried out the received flying skill for the first time and felt an incredible feeling of weightlessness. At that, the guy thanked his virtual assistant, without whom he definitely wouldn't have made it without. Isis stated that her purpose of creation and was to be useful to the master. As she approached her goal, Isis advised Tomoya to be extremely careful. Since there was information that life signals were constantly disappearing in the nearby city, Tomoya became wary and wondered if the people in the city were being attacked by someone. Isis reported that the demons had come to slaughter all humans and beasts, and judging from the information received, there was a full-fledged invasion. Tomoya decided to intervene in the situation and definitely help the people of the city to fight off the demons. Isis supported her master's noble impulse and instantly changed the route. With that, Tomoya ended his story of how he ended up in Lucia's settlement. At the same time, Tomoya continued to be angry at the goddess of the universe at every memory of her. Even though the previous day was full of unpleasant memories, Tomoya enjoyed defending Sayaka, whose name in this world was Lucia. While Tomoya was contemplating his life, Lucia finally woke up and embarrassedly wished her master good morning. The young hero himself immediately remembered the previous night and decided that it really wasn't all that bad. A few days after the battle with the huge dragons, Tomoya and the others traveled on several wagons to the city. Tomoya decided to divide all the valuable materials dropped off for everyone, including the delicious dragon meat. On the first night, during the stopover, Tomoya volunteered to watch and guard the camp, for thanks to the cheater abilities he had gained, he had absolutely no need for rest. Tomoya thought that he would be very bored, but sometimes one of the girls, Misha, would keep him company and help pass the time. Misha once again thanked for the rescue, and the young lady's excitement was noticeable. At the same time, Lucia was noticeably jealous when Misha came over just to chat on a cool evening by the fire. Tomoya clearly felt a certain tension, although Lucia suddenly said that it was not worth thinking about the younger people, that they were just children, and for example Misha was already 18 years old. But Misha turned out to be a really naive girl, and began to thank for the help and confessed that age was not important to her at all. At the same time, young Misha said that she was really of age and could afford a lot of things. From such an unambiguous hint, Lucia became even more angry, and Tomoya tried to get rid of the sudden desire to get to know the attractive Misha. After Lucia and Tomoya were left alone, the girl asked to train her, as she wants to become strong to protect all the villagers herself. After all, if Tomoya didn't show up the settlement in time, they would be all dead by now. Lucia confessed that the most important dream for her at the moment is to gain the strength to protect the people she cares about. Tomoya understood her friend's desire and promised to help in this matter. Although immediately warned that it will be not quite ordinary training, but Lucia will definitely become stronger, and for this it will be necessary to train day and night. Tomoya decided to combine the pleasant with the useful and give strength to the girl with a skill that endows seed. The girl was embarrassed at the suggestion of immediate training and reminded that the others were nearby and they might wake everyone up. But Tomoya promised that everything would be fine and not to worry. And eventually Tomoya's persistence allowed him to persuade the girl for the first not-so-common strength training. After a few days of traveling, it appeared that the friends would soon reach the city of Amud. At this point, the virtual assistant Isis warned of the approach of unknown life forms, and the danger of a surprise attack increased. Isis warned that the enemy squad included 15 humans and 22 beastmen. Lucia noticed how agitated Tomoya had become and asked what was wrong. But the hero only asked to remain calm and quiet. Tomoya quickly explained to all the girls about the situation in which they found themselves, because at the moment they were surrounded by enemies. At the same time, Tomoya tried to behave calmly and promised the girls that no one could catch them. Soon showed up in the enemies, who in turn were very happy to discover such a beautiful camp of travelers. And especially the bandits were pleased with the pleasant odor of the women. Tomoya, realizing that it was stupid, but still naively asked the bandits to just leave their quiet camp. The bandits only laughed in response and praised Tomoya for such a cheerful reception. Naturally, none of the raiders were going to give up their rich profits. The bandits threatened to take all of Tomoya's money, women, and then his life, all accompanied by insults and the evil laughter of the thugs. Tomoya decided that maybe he should just end it all and deal with the bandits quickly. But suddenly Lucia stepped forward and asked him to leave all the bandits to her. At that, the brave girl defiantly bared her blade, showing the seriousness of her intentions. Tomoya decided to let the girl show all her acquired powers, but also promised to be by her side and help in case of trouble. The thugs from Surprise even stopped laughing, for they had not expected to see such a brave girl. But then another wave of insults fell on Tomoya. The bandits called the guy a real cretin who decided to pit an ordinary child girl against them. But Lucia immediately took the initiative and with one swift blow stopped the bandit's laughter by cutting off his head. The boy's head had not yet had time to roll aside, but the other bandits had already stopped laughing smugly and felt the real danger from the girl. Lucia showed her animal nature and viciously roared at her opponents, demanding that they prepare to die. But the leader of the bandits, a rather powerful guy with a combat strength of 3,000 units, told his underlings that everyone should calm down and they would definitely win thanks to their numerical superiority. Lucia had no intention of feeling sorry for the bandits and continued to destroy the bandits. The beastly speed allowed her to destroy a few bandits and it instilled panic in the others. The gang leader could not believe that an ordinary fragile girl so easily massacred his men. In fact, the bandit leader had expected to easily rob ordinary frightened refugees and did not expect to encounter such a monster with a sword. Meanwhile, thanks to the destruction of the thugs, Lumia, and formerly Sayaka, had already reached the 13th level and increased her combat power to almost 3.5 units. In a battle with a strong enemy, the bandits proved to be very weak and cowardly fighters, and so the leader ordered an immediate retreat while he had any underlings left at all. The bandits scattered in panic, trying to take cover in the dense thickets as soon as possible. Soon only corpses remained of the band of bandits, and the brave Lucia rejoiced in her success. At the same time, the girl thanked Tomoya, for it was only through his pleasant training that she was able to increase her level of strength. Misha, who was watching the battle, marveled at Lucia's new abilities and asked how she was able to achieve this. Lucia proudly replied that it was all due to Tomoya. After this incident, the group of refugees continued traveling, and soon they were able to reach the town of Amud without encountering any more problems. The son of the head of the city, Luthor, greeted Lucia and was happy to see her safe and sound. The excited fellow possessed a level 35 and a combat power of over 1,000 units. Lucia thanked Luthor for his concern and was also happy to see her. Luthor found himself admiring Lucia's beauty too much and squeezed the girl's hands too tightly. Lucia noticed the boy's not quite normal reaction and asked him to let go of her hands. Luthor admitted how worried everyone had gotten when they heard about the attack on Lucia's settlement. The head of Amud City, Gorman Borg, turned out to be a rather strong man with level 59 and a combat power of almost 4,000. Gorman Borg stated that they were happy to accept the refugees, and it was a great relief to find out how they managed to escape. The city of Amud is the headquarters of the Adventurers Guild due to its close proximity to the capital and the border of the state. Therefore, the family of the head of the city not only manages the affairs, but also deals with the defense. The girls admired the hospitality of the town head and were happy that they were able to get there alive. At this, Gorman Borg promised on his own behalf to provide full protection for all the women who arrived. The head of the town then turned his attention to Tomoya and stated that it was not good to leave without a well-deserved reward. Gorman Borg suggested that the heroes stay the night and enjoy the hospitality. Tomoya accepted the offer and decided it wouldn't be a bad idea to look around the city. Once in the provided room with Lucia, Tomoya was too thoughtful and the girl asked what was going on. Tomoya confessed that he had a bad feeling and it was bothering him. Tomoya stated that of course it would be nice to stay in this city, but he needs to prepare for the future because all these attacks are just the beginning of more horrifying events. Tomoya explained that he wanted to join the Adventurers Guild because it would be easier to move around. A worried Lucia asked where Tomoya was going to go if he didn't know the world at all. The guy explained that he couldn't just stay here, but Lucia herself must realize that it would be safer for her to stay in this city, even though she had become much stronger. but the girl reminded how they hadn't seen each other for a long time and only now they could find each other in this world, and how they could now part ways. Tomoya reminded Lucia how she herself wanted to stay with the people she considered family, for they were family to her. The girl replied that she certainly did not recant. The girl then explained that if indeed the world was in such danger, she wanted to help Tomoya no matter what and stay always by her side. Lucia declared that she would not stay in this town even if Tomoya ordered her as his slave. But the guy decided to explain how much he worries about Lucia, and so he doesn't want to put the girl in danger. After a short talk about a possible trip together, Tomoya suggested that they celebrate their arrival in the city with an intense training session. After a hot night together, Tomoya was not feeling well after breakfast in the morning, causing Lucia to worry. Thanks to the virtual assistant Isis who activated the poison resistance, Tomoya found out that his food appeared to contain a strong dose of laxatives. If poisoned with such a poison, a normal person would get 3 days of diarrhea with the possibility of death. Tomoya immediately decided that it was probably Luthor who had put the laxative in his food. It was obvious that the son of the head of the city liked Lucia very much, and thus wanted to get rid of his rival, especially since Luthor had heard them making noise last night during their so-called training. Tomoya decided not to develop a conflict with the city head's son and simply thanked him for breakfast and then got ready to go to the Adventurers Guild with Lucia. Luthor's surprised face caused Tomoya to have a lot of positive emotions because the city head's son was visibly upset by his failure. First, to become adventurers, one had to register with the Adventurers Guild and only then set out on a journey. Once in the Adventurers Guild, Tomoya and Lucia immediately approached the administrator, who was an attractive girl. The administrator greeted the guild guests and asked how she could help. Tomoya explained that he and his friend would like to register as adventurers and engage in destroying various monsters. The receptionist girl kindly offered to touch the magic crystal to start the registration process. Tomoya touched the magic crystal and felt a strange feeling, and the crystal itself began to shine much brighter. After that, the receptionist girl explained that the registration was already finished, and since there was no information about law violations, they could proceed to the next step of registration. Tomoya was surprised at how simple everything was, and the receptionist girl explained that this magic ball showed all the applicant scores. Also, with the help of this magic ball, the guild management prevents various criminals from registering as adventurers. But there is no need to worry because all personal information is strictly classified. After that, the admin girl before the next evaluation of the applicants decided to talk about the existing ranking system in the guild. The administrator explained that there are 6 ranks starting from the lowest E rank. Any adventurer can go higher due to their abilities. The next rank is the D rank, whose holders are in the business of subduing low-level demons. C rank includes the bulk of experienced adventurers. B rank is the next stage and is possessed by stronger adventurers. A rank allows you to perform special tasks from the guild. And the highest rank S is the pinnacle of human strength, and such ranks receive only the most difficult tasks, and only a few adventurers reach. At the same time, starting with this rank, you can pass a special exam, which will assess the applicant's abilities, including leadership skills and information gathering skills. The admin girl asked if she had explained it clearly, and if not, she could repeat it. But Tomoya understood the basic principles and thanked the girl for the information. At this moment, the new guild guests were noticed by a strange man with a horn. The experienced adventurer was interested in Tomoya's powerful aura, and it seemed incredible for a newcomer who had just come to register for the guild. The adult adventurer was Edwen from Seichai's group, who possessed his rank and had reached level 89. As well, Edwen possessed a combat power of over 9,000 units. The experienced adventurer turned to Tomoya and asked if he was really new. The admin girl confirmed that indeed new recruits, and Edwen asked to go with him to another room. Tomoya did not know how to properly communicate with such personalities and looked questioningly at Lucia. The guild applicants were then invited to sit down on a comfortable couch and drink some fragrant tea to continue their acquaintance. Edwen decided to get straight to the point and asked Tomoya to use all his power. But the guy still reminded that he was actually a regular newbie and didn't know what methods the guild used. But at the same time, he was sure that no one could know his exact details. But Edwin explained that he was able to find out for sure that Tomoya has the ability to recognize the true power of his enemy, and it is interesting. Tomoya from the beginning did not want to stand out in the new world, and so the assistant Isis helped to carefully hide his true strength by reducing the visible indicators. But it was very strange how Edwin could even figure out that Tomoya was hiding his true stats, as well as learn about his ability to carefully analyze his opponents. In turn, Edwin admitted that he was very curious to know exactly at what age Tomoya got his incredible strength. Edwin then explained that he didn't expect to get an honest answer at all, given how carefully Tomoya had tried to hide his real stats. Tomoya was stunned by his interlocutor's insight and asked if Edwin was sure of what he was saying. The experience's rank holder immediately explained that he had the unique ability to recognize the true strength of others. To give an example, Edwin analyzed Lucia and explained that she possessed a rank and even a combat squad wouldn't be able to handle her with her combat power exceeding 4,000. And this is how the details about Tomoya were found out. Edwin then admitted that he was unsure of the true limit of Tomoya's strength. And in the past 100 years of being in this guild, he had never met someone like that. For always the greater the strength, the more obvious the difference in ability, which in this case is difficult even to imagine. Edwin explained that when he saw Tomoya, he felt as if he was facing the Demon King himself. Such an assessment greatly surprised Tomoya, for he had not even expected such a thing, that he would be compared to demons. Tomoya asked if Edwin was not exaggerating too much in his conclusions. But the experienced adventurer explained that he had personally met the Demon King in the war 4 years ago, so he knew what he was talking about. Such words only made Tomoya wonder why he had the same abilities as the Demon King. Then Avdon recognized that at any rate Tomoya seems much kinder than the Demon King, and it is only natural that Tomoya is trying to hide his immense power. But if Tomoya does accept the offer of cooperation, a good reward will be waiting for him. First, Edwin offered 100 gold coins in advance, regardless of the outcome of the mission, and second, Tomoya will be provided with the best housing in town, of course completely free of charge, and in the case of a successful mission, Tomoya will additionally receive another 1,000 gold coins and will be able to immediately get rank B. Edwin also promised to send a letter requesting the guild to allow free passage to any city on this continent for Tomoya and his companion. The boy was surprised by such generosity and said that Edwin was offering quite a lot. Tomoya inquired as to the catch of this mission. Edwin admitted that the job is quite difficult and it is not suitable for an ordinary person. Tomoya asked why then not gather other adventurers with his rank who would easily accomplish any difficult task. But Edwin explained that such activities were out of his power, and all the high-ranked adventurers were scattered around the world. So it would be very difficult to gather them all in one place. And so in this situation, that leaves only Tomoya to offer the difficult task. The hero himself thought about the proposal, because it had both pros and cons, and it was not clear until the end what exactly we'll have to face. In the end, Tomoya agreed to the proposal, because the curiosity and thirst for adventure was too great. Avard thanked him for making the right decision, and said that before leaving, Tomoya had to meet someone else. The maid obeyed Avard's gesture and opened the door, and a beautiful stranger entered the room, immediately attracting Tomoya's gaze. Introduced by Advance, the girl introduced herself as Soniel and explained that she was now a rented slave for Tomoya. The girl turned out to be a ranked adventurer with level 65, with a combat power of over 7,500 units. Soniel stated that she would be an assistant for Tomoya throughout the lease. Tomoya realized that this slave girl was in all likelihood the strongest rank valiant adventurer in the area, and so Old Man Edwin decided to provide her for assistance. The virtual assistant Isis explained that the Kingdom of Drumrocks has a slave system, in which there are servant slaves, warrior slaves, laborer slaves, and even criminal slaves, and any category of slaves can be rented. In this situation, Soniel will play the role of a mentor, and in all likelihood, she will try to teach all the necessary knowledge needed for an adventurer. Soniel has stated that she must evaluate Tomoya's fighting prowess, and so there is a mopping up of a goblin raid ahead. Soniel explained that there was a large group of goblins on the plain south of the city of Mithra, with the Goblin Emperor at the head. The slave warrior then asked if it would be too difficult for the newcomer Tomoya. But if Tomoya couldn't handle this task, it was unlikely that he would be able to continue with the elite task that Edwen had assigned. Tomoya realized that only on the condition of completing the training task, Soniel would fully reveal the details of Edwen's special mission, and so the intrigue is still intact for now. It became obvious that Tomoya must display all of his true strength in order to successfully overcome the battle with the Goblin group. A squad of goblins appeared in the distance, and Soniel confirmed that it was just one of the raiding battalions of goblins. To begin with, Soniel offered to show Tomoya her abilities and asked him not to interfere while she fought the goblins. Such boldness pleased Tomoya and was curious to see what this beautiful girl could do. The beautiful adventurer Soniel decided to display her magical abilities, and a bright magical aura appeared around her. The magical electric wall flashed with bright discharges and instantly destroyed several goblins. Then Soniel attacked the frightened goblins with her staff and instantly destroyed several more monsters. Tomoya admired Soniel's magnificent and graceful movements, although this was about what he expected from an rank adventurer who should be able to destroy dangerous monsters. After finishing fighting the goblins, Soniel thanked her temporary master for the praise. The girl slave then explained that in the future, while Tomoya and Lucia would fight, then she would just be a support in extreme cases. Tomoya promised to do his best and pass the training task with confidence. Soniel promised that she would defend with magic from behind, while Tomoya and Lucia should attack the goblins in front. The hero agreed to this plan of action and thought that he would easily destroy the goblins. Tomoya decided that frankly, he could just burn all the goblins with magic in just 1 minute, but then such a victory would not be considered a full training. Tomoya explained to Lucia that he would take care of the goblins on the right and she should take on the ones on the left. Lucia was confident in her abilities and promised to do it right. Tomoya and Lucia's lightning-fast attacks left no chance of survival for the goblins who were still trying to fight back, but it was very bad. Soniel watched the battle closely and was amazed at the skill of the newcomers, who really didn't look like newcomers at all. After the last goblin was destroyed, Tomoya offered Soniel to evaluate the completion of the training mission. The excited slave girl stated that Tomoya's movements looked very artificial, although they always achieved the desired goal. Soniel explained that Mistress Lucia's movements were a bit wooden, but Tomoya looked like he was desperately trying to contain his strength. Soniel reminded that Edwen-san's request was of the utmost importance, and therefore under no circumstances should there be even a small chance of failure. In fact, Edwen might take on this difficult task himself, and so she could refuse Tomoya's help if she deemed him unsuitable for the task. Tomoya, judging from Soniel's reaction, has decided that something like this has happened in the past, and that is why she speaks so confidently. Realizing the importance of the events, Tomoya promised that he would show his true power from now on. Meanwhile, the main forces of the Goblin raid had arrived in the area and were ready to avenge their dead kin. Tomoya was surprised at the sheer number of opponents, and Assistant Isis clarified that the total number of goblins was 512 creatures with the highest combat power of 2010. Soniel admitted that she had not expected such a huge number of goblins. But Tomoya replied that there was no problem at all, and they would definitely be able to handle it. Although Lucia wasn't so confident at the sight of an entire army of goblins. This time, the young hero Tomoya decided to show off his magical abilities and created a rapid explosion. The enormous flames poured down on the goblins in a deadly barrage, leaving the monsters no chance of survival. Soniel couldn't believe what she was seeing, for she didn't expect such power from Tomoya, even considering that the guy partially hides his abilities. Isis immediately reported a level increase to the 84th level. At the same time, Lucia's level also increased to 25th level, and her combat power increased significantly. Soniel immediately admitted that such an incredible victory had also allowed her to level up to 70th and increase her combat power to nearly 9,000. The stunned Soniel asked what was this even. Tomoya explained that it was just advanced fire magic and there was nothing unusual about it. But Soniel admitted that such abilities were beyond her expectations, and so they must change the entire future plan of action. An excited Soniel said that they should leave for the Drumrock's kingdom as soon as possible, and they would definitely need to take a carriage when they returned to Amud. But Tomoya asked to wait a little longer and turned his attention to something curious in the distance. Tomoya resented the survivability of the Goblin Emperor, who somehow miraculously managed to survive the crazy flames. The angry monster sent many curses and insults at Tomoya, and Soniel explained that the Goblin Emperor was the strongest among all, and was actually the boss of the Goblin raid with level 30. Tomoya wasn't too impressed with the average strength of his opponent, but he still decided to immediately stop him while Goblin Emperor was still on his last breath. But suddenly, the wounded Goblin Emperor transformed dramatically and became several times larger. Renewed by magic, the Goblin Emperor already possessed a level 90 and a combat power of over 6,000 units. Tomoya asked why this monster had improved so suddenly. Soniel explained that the difficulty of the Goblin raid was that if you deprive the Emperor of troops and wound him, then he becomes terrifyingly strong. So in theory, usually the Goblin Emperor is usually tried to be killed at the very beginning of the battle without touching the weaker opponents. Tomoya realized that he had personally made it difficult for himself by deciding to impress those around him. Tomoya apologized for his carelessness, and Lucia stated that it was unlikely that he would be able to defeat such a strong monster. Soniel stated that in such a case, there was no choice but to make a plan and escape immediately. The slave girl explained that she would become a decoy to buy time until Tomoya and Lucia could reach the city and ask Edwin for help. In doing so, it is necessary to hurry because if the Goblin Emperor reaches the city, the consequences will be dire. Tomoya asked that will this monster become a huge problem if it starts to run rampant. Tomoya ended up promising to immediately finish off the Goblin King here and now. The girls marveled at Tomoya's courage and marveled at the incredible translucent blade in the hero's hands. Moving forward, Tomoya asked Soniel to watch him closely to eventually evaluate whether he was worthy for a special assignment from Edwin. Soniel replied that she sincerely hoped Tomoya would succeed, while an excited Lucia wished her friend good luck. The vile Goblin Emperor resented Tomoya for laughing at him and promised the hero imminent death. But to the Goblin Emperor's surprise, his powerful blow did not affect Tomoya in any way. The activated magical defense allowed the hero to block the blow and suffer no damage. The Goblin Emperor roared that it was impossible, but it was indeed as Tomoya had planned. Soniel was as surprised as the Goblin Emperor, for Tomoya was able to hold back the blow with his bare hands and didn't even stagger from his seat. Tomoya, however, declared to his dangerous opponent that the longer he was on his feet, the dumber he looked. After the insulting words, Tomoya sprang into action and delivered a lightning-fast leg kick that left the Goblin Emperor bent in half. Without letting his opponent recover, Tomoya decided to end the fight with his blade. The sword strike was so precise and strong that Tomoya was able to cut the huge monster in half, thus finally destroying the Goblin Emperor. Isis immediately reported the experience points and level up to 92nd, with Tomoya's combat power reaching 240,000. Lucia was ecstatic at her favorite friend's victory, while Soniel was so surprised that she fell into a real stupor. Eventually, the slave girl came to her senses and admitted that she was incredibly amazed at such a magnificent victory. Tomoya wondered what kind of grade Soniel would now give on the result of completing the training task. The slave girl was so excited that she didn't even know how to answer correctly. In the end, Soniel admitted that she wanted to ask Tomoya something. Unexpectedly, the slave girl asked the young hero to buy her out for good because she felt an overwhelming desire to be together. This time it was Tomoya's turn to fall into a stupor, for he did not understand the traditions of the slave owner at all and did not particularly want to take such a responsible step. After defeating the Goblin Emperor, the team of adventurers returned back to the trading company, the head of which was extremely surprised at such a speedy return and asked Soniel what had happened. The slave girl went straight to the point and asked the head of the trading company to allow Tomoya-san to buy her back permanently, since she felt that this man was worthy of being her master. Tomoya pondered that he never actually gave his consent, and it is strange that Soniel is trying to decide everything alone. The head of the trading company was surprised at Soniel's sudden eagerness and decided that she must really have confidence in the young master. Tomoya, on the other hand, continued to be surprised at how succinctly this conversation was going on and gradually realized that he didn't mind buying a slave girl for himself at all. During a short acquaintance, Soniel was able to prove herself as a strong, experienced, intelligent, and simply beautiful girl, and in addition, her beauty is really aesthetic pleasure. After talking to the girl, the head of the trading company approached Tomoya to negotiate all the details of the financial deal. The head of the trading company explained that from this day forward and for another whole month, people will try to bid high for Soniel at the auction. And so Tomoya-sen must decide whether he can pay the necessary amount for a popular girl like Soniel. Tomoya was slightly wary of possible surprises and inquired about the price for the slave girl. The head of the trading company said without stopping smiling that Tomoya-san would need 5,000 Dromorxine gold coins to complete this transaction. Soniel immediately became indignant and called this price too high. But the head of the trading company explained that the purchase request was first put up by the diplomatic minister Goblin, and that was why the price had skyrocketed. At the same time, the owner Soniel said that Goblin is of course an honest official who has helped the economy grow through his art of negotiation and trade with other countries. But unfortunately, he is known for his strange preference to use and break slave girls. So it would be a shame to put the beautiful Soniel in the hands of such a rotten man. Tomoya, of course, did not want such a fate for the beautiful and useful Soniel, and even despite the huge price agreed to buy the girl back into his ownership. Then the young hero dared to surprise even the head of the trading company, and said that 5,000 coins was too small a price for the gorgeous Soniel, and so he would try to prepare 30,000 coins. The head of the trading company did not immediately believe what he heard, and reminded him that just 3 royal coins was a price comparable to all the possessions of a rich merchant. Isis instantly explained to her master that 1 royal coin in this world was equal to 10 ordinary gold coins, and 3 such coins are enough to buy 100 lives. But Tomoya continued to insist and said that Soniel was worthy of such a price, and so he promised to prepare such a sum within a month. The head of the trading company did not argue with the generous hero, for in his place it would be foolish to refuse such money. The head of the trading company said at the end of the conversation that he now quite understood why Soniel was so attached to Tomoya-san. But unfortunately, business is business, and the rules are the same for everyone. Whoever pays the most wins. Tomoya promised to hold up his end of the bargain and be sure to remember this important rule. Soniel asked Tomoya if it was the right decision to challenge the minister himself so openly. But the young hero replied that since he was a real man, he absolutely did not want to give such a beautiful girl to someone else. Tomoya asked the slave girl not to worry and promised to be sure to ransom Soniel, for by doing so he would show that he was indeed a worthy man to be her master. The beautiful slave girl was happy with this attitude and confessed that she was looking forward to it happening. Tomoya thought at that moment that he had divine chits on his side, so everything should go the way he wanted it to. That same night, Lucia and Soniel found themselves alone and decided to talk to get to know each other better. Lucia asked Soniel to stop calling her mistress, since they were both identical slaves to the same master. Soniel admitted that she originally thought Tomoya and Samuel were a couple in love, because their relationship is not at all like that of master and slave. Then Samuel apologized for asking too many questions about her personal life, because her status does not allow her to be interested in such topics about her master's life. But Lucia immediately reassured her new friend and explained that it seemed to her that Tomoya could be loved by many people from now on. Though Tomoya himself doesn't realize it yet, he's become quite a popular character as of late. Lucia explained that this is why they should team up with Soniel and help their master together, and they could also love him together if Soniel felt the same way about Tomoya. Soniel immediately agreed to be a faithful partner and thanked Mrs. Lucia for her kindness. Lucia immediately reminded her to forget once and for all to call her mistress, for it was very embarrassing. Lucia explained that it would be quite enough to call her by her first name, and it would be easier for everyone. Soniel promised to do so and asked her to call her by her first name too. After all, from now on, they would be true partners united by one goal. Both girls agreed to tell each other about all secrets and problems, as well as their feelings for Tomoya-san. Each of the girls were encouraged to become friends, for it is moments like this that great legends begin. Later, the girls would become the strongest army of battle slaves made up of Tomoya's personal concubines, although at this moment, no one could imagine such a thing. The next morning, Tomoya went to the local market to buy something to eat and was surprised at how good the food was in this fantasy city. The first thing Tomoya and his two beautiful companions did upon arriving in the capital city was to go to the guild's main headquarters. The Adventurer Guild Grand Master and Edwayne's younger brother, Oldwayne, who greeted them, quickly explained the essence of the upcoming special assignment. Oldwayne told them that the Silver Fenrir wolf tribe had declared war on the humans, and it had become known that they would be attacking the capital on the orders of their leader. This whole situation is quite unexpected and unusual, for they are quite intelligent beings who have never fought humans before or even shown aggression. It seems that before, the leader of the Silver Fenrir and Queen Hildegard the 20th were allies. But at the moment, Her Majesty is completely bedridden and unable to do anything. Tomoya and his companions, after listening to the basic information about the problem, decided to rest in this city until the meeting of the chief strategists began. Walking through the streets of the city, Tomoya observed the locals and realized that most likely the public was completely unaware of the impending problems. It was obvious that the capital's leadership feared a possible panic in the city and therefore kept the locals completely in the dark. Tomoya then noticed a strange-looking elderly woman. Tomoya and the woman's gazes met, and the old woman immediately called out to the young boy. Tomoya decided to be polite and asked what was wrong. The woman stated that her stomach was bothering her very much. Tomoya thought that the woman was in pain, but it turned out to be much more trivial. The woman was just hungry. Tomoya, of course, helped the old woman and shared the food he bought, which made the old woman's mood and well-being improved dramatically. Tomoya was happy to help the suffering and said goodbye. But suddenly, the old woman grabbed Tomoya by the arm and said that she should repay such kindness. The boy tried to calm the worried woman and explained that his help was completely gratuitous and he was helping from the bottom of his heart with no thought of reward. But the woman kept muttering that she should thank Tomoya in some way. The young hero began to feel a pent-up irritation, especially after the old woman began to hint at intimacy as a thank you for the food. The intrusive woman then offered to take care of Tomoya's mind if there were any worries and concerns. Tomoya did not understand at all what the old woman wanted and wanted to get rid of her company as soon as possible. But the woman began to declare that despite her senile appearance, she was actually in charge of the entire country. Tomoya irritatedly asked who she even was. But at that moment, someone called out to the old woman, and the strange woman was distracted from the conversation. In parting, the strange old woman promised that the next time they met, they would definitely have an unforgettable time together and enjoy each other. Such plans of the woman made Tomoya feel uncomfortable, and he barked back that it would never happen and so they had better not meet again. The woman only laughed and stated that she absolutely knew that this was not their last meeting, and then ran away. Tomoya was impressed by this unusual encounter with an inadequate old woman and wanted to forget the encounter as soon as possible. Soon came the first evening of his stay in the royal capital. Tomoya just lay in bed and tried to relax, although the thought of the upcoming difficult task made him think hard. But suddenly, two faithful companions entered the room, and they looked too mysterious. Tomoya offered to settle down and wanted to find out what had brought the girls to him at such a late hour. The girls continued to be strangely silent and just occasionally glanced among themselves. And Tomoya was tired of being overly mysterious and asked for an explanation of what the matter was all about. But the next moment, when young Soniel threw off her outer garments, Tomoya asked why she was doing so. Tomoya reminded that he was not yet a full master for Soniel, and so they should not get so close. But the slave girl was persistent and admitted that she couldn't stand it for so long, and it was better to get closer soon. Lucia was on her friend's side and began to convince Tomoya that one should not stop a girl when she has a sincere desire. Such openness surprised Tomoya, and the guy wondered when the girls had gotten so close that they had become so understanding of each other's desires. Tomoya never heard any explanation, but only felt the incredible female persistence. Young Soniel behaved like a seasoned woman and suggested that no time be wasted on foolish talk. Tomoya realized that he had no more strength left to resist such a temptation. After all, he was still quite a young guy and certainly had a weakness for beautiful girls. After Soniel did get her way, she looked really happy, and Tomoya, who was just as happy as the girl, promised to be sure to buy her back from her previous owner. Soniel confessed that she was waiting for this moment more than anything else in her life and was willing to wait a little longer. Virtual Isis suggested that at this stage of the relationship, romantic feelings were brought to the maximum and the conquest of the slave girl was successful. But then came a surprising message from Isis, in which the virtual assistant reported that Samuel had already become Tomoya's property. The guy didn't understand how this could happen, since he hadn't yet agreed on a contract or made payment for the slave. But then suggested that it must have been due to their unexpected intimacy, and it was this that made the adjustments to determine Samuel's status. Isis reported that the number of slave girls had exceeded the required number, and the overlord ability had increased after a certain accumulation of experience with romantic feelings, and now the additional ability of Harem King had been unlocked. Tomoya felt an unexpected excitement and decided to somehow fight this swelling feeling. But alas, Tomoya was never able to fall asleep again and continued to stare at the pale moon, thinking about his new ability and the sudden experience. In the morning, Tomoya and his girls went to a strategy meeting dedicated to preventing monster invasion. The excited Luthor was surprised to learn that Lucia would also be taking part in the dangerous mission and tried to explain how dangerous it was at all. But his father, Gorman Borg, immediately reprimanded him and demanded that Luthor behave more decently around the people here. The arrival of the head of strategic planning and execution, Lord Godman Leblochi, was then announced. A small and bald middle-aged man, the same vile pervert that Tomoya had already heard about, entered the room with a very beautiful slave girl, and everyone immediately stopped their noisy conversations. Lord Godman took his seat and said that he was pleased to see everyone gathered today. Tomoya continued to scrutinize the Honorable Lord and recalled the details he had learned about. The omniscient Isis had confirmed that this person was the Lord who intended to rebuy Soniel. Tomoya immediately understood why the head of the trading company had warned him so much, for it was obvious that Lord Godman possessed wealth and considerable influence in high society. In the meantime, discussion began on the basic details of this private meeting. During the strategic meeting, it was decided to avoid the battle with Fenrir. And for the subsequent negotiations with the opponents, it was necessary to enter the Spirit Forest. The difficulty was that the size of the Spirit Forest was quite huge and could be compared to an entire country. Also in this forest were unexplored dungeons. It was rumored that deep within the Forest of Spirits were legendary ruins containing incredible artifacts. One wondered what the Fenrir would want during a meeting in such a unique place. It was decided that a small elite group of adventurers would go to the negotiations. Among them, of course, was Tomoya's squad, also Gorman Borg with his son Luthor, and also a girl Ariel Soldart Regelstein, who at first glance was an experienced person and was characterized by a special politeness in communication. Tomoya immediately reminded that they all had to trust each other with their own lives on this dangerous trek, and therefore suggested that Ariel Soldart refrain from excessive formality in communication. The girl apologized for the inconvenience and explained that she simply had such a peculiar accent. However, she was willing to comply with Tomoya-san's request to change her manner of speaking. The guy in turn apologized for the temporary inconvenience and explained that it would be much easier in extreme situations. Soniel explained that Master Ariel comes from a place where everyone speaks very courteously. Soniel was pleased to meet Ariel, while calling her mistress, and also noticed that her sword art was much better than before. Ariel was also pleased to meet her and reminded her that it was now possible to avoid formalities in communication. Therefore, it was better to communicate using only first names and, at Tomoya's request, not to use the expressions and misses. Ariel then asked Samuel why a girl like her was around such a dorky Tomoya. Samuel explained that at the moment Tomoya was her master, and therefore it was her duty. Meanwhile, Luthor continued to show concern and care towards Lucia. The worried young man confessed that he was against Lucia's participation in the trek because it was a very dangerous mission. Lucia had already grown tired of Luthor's pestering and only occasionally pretended to thank him for his attention and care. Gorman Borg apologized for the behavior and temper of his restless son and admitted that he personally enjoyed Tomoya's company during this important mission. Tomoya had long ago realized that Gorman Borg was different from Luthor and was also glad to have such an experienced man by their side. Gorman tried to explain that his son is not a bad man at all, but alas, Luthor is overly eccentric and often displays narrow-mindedness. And unfortunately, as a father, he is often ashamed of his disobedient and irascible son. Tomoya explained that Luthor's life is just a period of unbridled youth, and it is quite common at that age, so things can still change for the better. Gorman agreed with Tomoya's observations and stated that visually he looks the same age as Luthor, but has a much more mature approach to life. Tomoya attributed the difference to his rich life experience and mentally recalled his real age, which was 41, and decided that probably by the criteria of this world, he was already considered an old man. Advancing further and further into the uncharted Yew Forest, Tomoya at one point noticed a sudden change in the atmosphere around him. Lucia explained that this was how they were being greeted, and so they should not let their guard down. Tomoya decided to leave the matter to Lucia since she was the only one who knew the Fenrir language. The girl promised to try to communicate at the first opportunity. A few minutes later, Lucia had a chance to show off her negotiation skills as huge white wolves came out to meet. Lucia turned to the Fenrirs and stated that she herself was a girl beast with white wolf roots, and their entire troop had come to these lands for the purpose of negotiation. Lucia tried to avoid conflict and urged the Fenrirs to remain calm. Tomoya stood at the ready and marveled at the strange language Lucia was speaking. Its sound was unlike anything Tomoya had heard before. Isis applied the blessing of the goddess of creation and activated the automatic translation of the unknown language, also activating the ability to recognize the dialects of all possible races. Tomoya heard the Fenrirs declare that they would not leave these places until the humans met their demands. The White Wolves demanded the return of the treasures stolen by the humans and assured him that in fact the leader did not want to start a ruinous war with the humans. Lucia had no idea which treasures were in question and asked why the White Wolves were sure that the humans were to blame for their disappearance. Tomoya realized that such negotiations were not going well and decided to participate. Tomoya apologized for interfering in the conversation and turned to the White Wolves. The guy stated that there appeared to be considerable miscommunication on both sides, and so it was best for everyone to calm down and just share important information. One of the Fenrir asked what if Tomoya just wanted to deceive them insidiously, since there was no evidence of the people's true intentions, and so they couldn't share information so easily. Tomoya mentally agreed with the Fenrir and realized that these creatures are incredibly cautious of possible enemies. Tomoya replied that he certainly understood all of the White Wolves' arguments, and so they were willing to end the negotiations and temporarily remove themselves from these areas. Tomoya explained to the whole group the result of the communication with the White Wolves, and no one could decide what to do next, since no one suspected about the stolen treasure. Ariel marveled at Tomoya's incredible knowledge of the rare Fenrir language and praised him for such a fine ability. But Tomoya knew that all of this was only due to the blessing of the goddess of creation. Gorman said that they did not have time to return to the main headquarters to clarify the objectives of the mission, and so they should split into two groups to solve two problems at the same time. The first group, led by Lucia, would have to stay in the forest and continue to negotiate with the White Wolves. Meanwhile, the second group will go to the kingdom's capital to coordinate with headquarters and start evacuation. Tomoya said that he should be the one to stay with Lucia in the forest, because they were the only ones who knew the language of the Fenrir and could effectively continue negotiating. And the rest of them could return to the capital, since leaving anyone else in the forest made no sense. Suddenly, Luthor intervened in the conversation and said that he would not allow Lucia to stay in the forest, and if so, he should stay with her. Like a little child, Luthor started to become hysterical and demanded to be left together with Lucia. But Tomoya was not going to give in to the foolish young man and tried to explain that Luthor's presence will only cause unnecessary trouble and in case of danger will have to protect him. Luthor began to shout and resent him, assuring him that he could take care of himself. Gorman tried to calm his son down, but Luthor would not listen to his father and continued to call everyone fools and idiots. Tomoya decided not to interfere in the relationship between father and son, but for himself he noted that Gorman upbringing was showing badly. After a noisy argument, even the father could not change Luthor's mind, and the smug young man solemnly declared that he was staying in the forest with Lucia and would guard her. Therefore, the girl could work in peace and feel secure. This time, Lucia's patience broke, and she struck her annoying admirer with her fist. The blow was so strong that the noisy young man flew several meters away and then landed rather painfully. The stunned Luthor asked why Lucia had hit him. After all, he only wanted to be near. But the angry girl stated how dare Luthor act like that at all, and why he thinks he is practically her boyfriend. Lucia barked that Luthor is fed up with his tantrums and should go to the capital. Lucia offered to clear things up once and for all and said that Luthor has no right to her because she belongs to Tomoya. It was clear that the girl was furious and really fed up with the whole situation. Tomoya remembered how in his distant childhood, the neighborhood children mocked his relationship with Sayaka, and it even made the young girl cry. However, those evil children didn't stop and eventually received the punishment they deserved. Sayaka beat all the offenders with a strong wooden stick and made everyone kneel, cry and apologize for their evil jokes. And now Lucia showed the same anger as she did then as a child, so she could easily beat up Luthor, and it would be unnecessary, especially in front of her father. Tomoya asked Lucia to stop and come over to him. Eventually, Tomoya was able to persuade the girl to calm down and apologize for her anger. Lucia went to meet and complied with her master's request and apologized to the entire group. Tomoya then stated that he alone would remain to negotiate as it would be for everyone, and in that case, there would be no unnecessary conflict. Left alone in the forest, Tomoya decided to continue negotiating with the White Wolves, although it was unclear exactly how to convince these proud and strong creatures. After a short discussion, the group still decided that Tomoya should not be left alone in the forest. And by blind lot, the choice fell on the beautiful Ariel. Tomoya apologized that she was the one who got the short straw, but Ariel was not upset at all and replied that it was fine. Lucia's mental state was very unstable, and so she went to the capital with the main group. Tomoya realized that Ariel certainly didn't understand the wolf language, but someone from the kingdom side had to stay, otherwise the troubled elders of the kingdom wouldn't believe in the outcome of the negotiations. Ariel admitted that judging from recent events, she thought Tomoya was a good person. Ariel also stated that Luthor's behavior made her very angry, although one must realize that he is after all still a normal child. Although it's high time he behaves like an adult, especially in such crucial moments. Ariel admitted that she also wants to become a grown woman as soon as possible. Tomoya was surprised by such a strange desire and asked how old Ariel really is. The girl explained that she was actually still a teenager, although she looked like a fully grown woman. Tomoya quickly examined the girl's figure and marveled at how quickly teenagers' bodies formed in this fantasy world. Ariel complained that her body was getting bigger too fast, and the people around her no longer treat her according to her real age. And all she wants to do is go shopping with her classmates and be fashionable and feminine. Ariel admitted that she can't help it and keeps improving her fencing skills, doing the same job as adults. Her father's expectations are too high, and that's why she doesn't want to disappoint him and constantly try her best. Tomoya replied that Ariel does give the impression of a fully grown woman, although she looks rather cute, like a real doll. The girl was surprised at this strange definition, since no one had ever called her that before. Tomoya expressed confidence that Ariel will look great in a beautiful feminine outfit, as she is an incredibly beautiful woman. But for now, it is necessary to pack up and go to negotiate with the Fenrir's. Tomoya promised to protect Ariel, and so she can take it easy and boldly follow him. The girl instantly blushed with embarrassment, for she really was still a small child at heart who had never been alone with a man before. Virtual Isis reported that Ariel Soldart's feeling of love had reached its maximum and the conquest process had been successfully completed. And due to the object's strong desire to voluntarily become a slave, Ariel was automatically added to the existing slaves. Tomoya thought that Ariel had succumbed to his charms too quickly, even though he didn't even intend to subdue her. Ariel admitted that she could not even imagine how kind a man Tomoya would turn out to be. The girl then apologized for her foolishness and offered to teach her the proper behavior of a grown woman. Tomoya, appreciating Ariel's attractive appearance, promised that he would certainly be able to escort her up the ladder to adulthood when the right moment came. At the same time, Tomoya realized that because of his skill, many phrases are formed arbitrarily in his head, and all that remains is to say them. Just at such an interesting moment of communication, the White Wolf appeared and apologized for his sudden appearance. The White Wolf explained that it was late, and he just wanted to check what was even going on here, and immediately found the negotiators. Tomoya asked what the White Wolves had decided to do, and it turned out that the Fenrir were also fine with continuing the negotiations. The Kingdom Envoy explained that he was willing to leave his weapons behind so as not to embarrass anyone, but the White Wolf replied that it wasn't necessary since Tomoya didn't look hostile. The White Wolf promised Tomoya to give him an audience with the Emperor. After the Fenrir headed back into the depths of the forest, Tomoya stated that they had probably embarrassed the White Wolf a bit with the little scene he had caught them in. Ariel only grinned and admitted that she was glad if she could help Tomoya-san, and also wouldn't mind repeating such a scene again. Soon, Tomoya and Ariel found themselves at the entrance to the mysterious dungeon where the Fenrir Emperor was supposed to be. Walking down the long corridor of the underground gallery, the majestic Silver Wolf Emperor soon appeared before the negotiators. The huge animal praised the guests for their courage, for he did not expect to ever see humans in his cave. Tomoya decided to be as polite as possible and thanked the Emperor for the invitation. Tomoya first asked for an explanation of the stolen treasure he had been told about during the negotiations and the sacrifices demanded by the Fenrir side. After all, this had led to misunderstandings on both sides and needed to be rectified as soon as possible. The Silver Wolf Emperor stated that he had not asked for any sacrifices, but it was indeed true about the treasures. The Silver Wolf Emperor's pearl left over from the death of the previous Silver Wolf Emperor had been stolen. Tomoya asked Ariel if she knew anything about the Silver Wolf Emperor's pearl, but it turned out that this was the first time the girl had heard of such an artifact. But then after thinking for a bit, the girl remembered how Godman once said something like if he got 2 more great pearls, he would rule the whole world. And they say that if you collect all 5 pearls, you can gain the power of a great dragon surpassing everything in this world. A pearl is actually a crystal of power created by the Kaiser before his death. And even if one absorbs one such pearl, one can gain immense power. Tomoya asked if all 5 pearls really belonged to the Kaisers. The Silver Wolf Emperor explained that the Kaisers have about 3 pieces, but at least 2 are definitely. The Kaisers definitely have the Dragon Emperor Pearl and the Supreme Pearl. Isis immediately explained that the pearl, unlike magic crystals, is only obtained if the Kaiser creates it himself. That being said, the Dragon Emperor's Pearl is special, and only 3 similar pearls can exist in the world at the same time. And once it is absorbed by someone, then the pearl cannot be created again until that person dies. As of now, the current location of the Supreme Pearl is unknown, and it would be very bad if some greedy person took possession of it. Tomoya asked the Silver Wolf Emperor if by any chance the Dragon Emperor Pearl belonged to the Sacred Mountain Emperor and the 2 Dragon Kaisers. The huge wolf asked in surprise, how could Tomoya know such a thing, since it was unknown to any human? But the young hero explained that he had the crystals of all 3 dragons as well as the pearl itself. Such a confession made the Silver Wolf Emperor indignant and animated. But then the mighty wolf analyzed Tomoya's condition and realized that the pearl was indeed inside the guy. The leader of all the wolves confessed his surprise, for he couldn't even imagine such a thing, that Tomoya could defeat the Sacred Mountain Emperor. Tomoya explained that the Sacred Mountain Emperor had given the pearl as a gift after the battle with the dragons. The mighty wolf admitted that it was all very amusing, because he would never have thought that the Emperor of the Sacred Mountain would recognize a human as worthy. Although all this could be very dangerous, and what will Tomoya now do with the pearl he received? The guy explained that he had actually never even thought about it, and in fact, until today, had never even heard of any pearls. Tomoya then asked if he understood correctly that he should simply return the Silver Wolf Emperor's pearl, and then there would be no war between the Fenrir and the humans. The mighty wolf replied that it would be enough if of course Tomoya could handle the task. Tomoya promised that it would be fine, especially since he had already taken the job. The Silver Wolf Emperor promised to be responsible for finding the lost pearl, since it was his mother's treasure and it was a necessary thing for the clan. Tomoya replied that he would surely find and return the valuable relic and prevent war. Tomoya then asked the Silver Wolf Emperor to refrain from acting hastily and give him time to search for the pearl. The mighty wolf promised to do his best. but also reminded him that he would not be able to restrain his kin for long. Since many of the younger wolves are bloodthirsty and believe that it is necessary to immediately organize an attack on the royal capital. At the same time, the Wolf Emperor admitted that by all means, he must restore his mother's life while she is still alive. Tomoya realized that in this case, one must really hurry, otherwise the consequences could be disastrous. Unexpectedly during the conversation, there were little wolf cubs nearby that looked so cute that even Tomoya could hardly contain his emotions, not to mention Ariel. The girl was delighted by the little furry creatures and rejoiced like a child. The Silver Wolf Emperor reminded the little furry animals as he told them to stay behind and sit quietly. But the wolf cubs completely disobeyed and started running around haphazardly. The Emperor apologized for the ridiculous situation and explained that they were his pups. Tomoya only laughed in response and called the Silver Wolf Emperor a wonderful babysitter for the little ones. The mighty wolf himself didn't deny it and explained that these little wolf cubs were the next generation of Silver Wolf Emperors and his personal pride. Soon after negotiating with the Silver Wolf Emperor, Tomoya along with Ariel returned to the royal capital and joined the main group to appear before Godman and ask important questions. Gorman Board reported how Tomoya-sen had spoken with the Emperor and the leader of the Silver Wolves. And through this communication, it was revealed that the only reason the Silver Wolves had sent word to the royal capital was to demand the return of their stolen treasure. But the wily Godman recalled that one important task was to find out what sacrifice the Silver Wolves were unilaterally demanding. Gormanborg replied that there was a huge inconsistency in this matter, so it would be excellent if Godman would provide an explanation about it. The wily Godman pretended not to understand the point and thus bought time for reflection. Tomoya intervened in the conversation and stated that the only demand of the Fenriers was the return of the Silver Wolf Emperor's pearl, and so it was actually simple. But Godman immediately asked where they could find the Silver Wolf Emperor's pearl if no one had ever heard of it in the first place. Godman continued to assure that he knew nothing about a pearl with such a name. But Tomoya already realized that Godman was just blatantly lying and offered to exchange it for the pearls he had, and then showed him the 2 glowing balls he had obtained from the dragons. Tomoya decided to take advantage of the trickery and explained that he had gotten the 2 pearls by accident, but he didn't know how to use them properly, and so it would be a good idea to sell them for a good price. Godman was immediately interested in the valuable facts and kept his eyes absolutely fixed on the desired pearls. He did not have to wait long, and almost immediately the greedy and cunning Godman asked to sell the pearls to him and promised to give as much money as Tomoya wanted, first offering 1,000 gold coins. But Tomoya decided to bully Godman and replied that it was too little. Tomoya stated that according to rumors, these pearls were very rare items and a price of even 20,000 gold coins would be too small for such artifacts. Godman immediately began to offer first 50, then 60,000 coins, and then completely losing his temper, he declared that he was willing to give everything he had for the pearls. Godman was shaking with excitement and great desire to get the pearls, and he began to shout that he was ready to give 120,000 gold coins right now. Tomoya asked that were these pearls really so good to pay such a huge amount of money for them. Godman began to tell that he actually had a weakness for collecting rare things, and that is why he had been looking for these pearls for years. Tomoya stated that he was willing to sell the pearls, but only on the condition that Godman would pay the entire amount at once. After receiving the desired pearls, Godman began to rejoice and said that he was finally able to get them. Tomoya, on the other hand, realized that the cunning official had swallowed his bait and needed to continue following the plan. At the same time, Tomoya gave Godman another chance to do the right thing and asked him if he really knew nothing about the Silver Wolf Emperor's pearl that the Fenriers were asking him to return. Quite expectedly, Godman replied that he had no such thing and had nothing to say about such a pearl. Godman then asked Tomoya to try to explain to the Silver Wolves that they did not have the right pearl and were not to blame for anything. After that, the cunning official fled to his chambers and waited until nightfall and tried to activate the magic pearls. But he failed, no matter how hard Godman tried. At the same time, Godman hoped for success, because according to the stories, it is necessary to collect the pearls and say special words on the night of the full moon, and then great power will be available. While Godman tried his best to activate the pearls, Tomoya watched everything from above using his flight ability. It was now obvious that the Silver Wolf Pearl was in the cunning official's possession. Godman was sure that he had collected all the necessary pearls, but Tomoya had actually given him the fakes just to find out. In doing so, Godman believed that he possessed the Silver Wolf's Pearl, the Demon Emperor's Eye Pearl, the Thunder Tiger Emperor's Pearl, the Dragon Emperor's Pearl, and the Supreme Pearl. Isis can use appraisal disguise on any valuables in order to prevent theft, and so Godman was easily deceived through the use of counterfeits. Through this trickery, it was made sure that Godman was the one in possession of the Pearl of the Silver Wolves. Tomoya decided to temporarily sedate the treacherous official and simply substitute the Silver Wolves Emperor's Pearl. It was a success, and the waking Godman could not notice the substitution and was only glad that all the pearls were in place. Tomoya, having obtained the right artifact, decided that he should return the pearl to the Silver Wolf Emperor and end the feud that could turn into a real war at any moment. But suddenly, the pearl that was in his hands disappeared, and the virtual Isis reported the successful absorption of the Silver Wolf's Pearl. Because of this, Tomoya received the title of Silver Wolf Emperor and increased his combat power by 50%. Also, Tomoya could now control the Wolf Clan and gained the ability of leadership, and the total combat power increased to 250,000. Tomoya asked what it all meant, but Isis first said that she didn't know the answer. But usually Kaiser Pearls should not be absorbed if nothing is known about them. Tomoya was upset about what had happened and now couldn't figure out how he should apologize to the Silver Wolves. Tomoya asked if there was any way to get the pearl out, since he didn't need it. But Isis explained that the process was irreversible and the pearl could only be taken out after the death of the owner. And at least she had no information about other ways to get rid of the artifact. Tomoya realized that there was nothing else left but to apologize to the Silver Wolves. Tomoya still decided that the Silver Wolves wouldn't kill him immediately, but still need to be prepared for any punishment. After all, he actually broke the agreement and now he can't return the pearl. Once in the night forest, suddenly Tomoya smelled the odor of fresh blood. Isis immediately warned of the possible danger and advised him to be careful. After a few minutes, it became obvious, even without the prompting of the virtual assistant, that Tomoya was completely surrounded. At the same time, Isis reported that a magical barrier had been placed around the area to prevent possible escape. One of the white wolves suddenly bit Tomoya's arm, and it immediately spoiled the impression of the encounter. The guy immediately applied magical wound treatment to stop the blood as soon as possible. Tomoya realized that he had let his guard down. Although the white wolves were apparently using an attack that ignored defense regardless of the difference in status, the wolves continued to behave aggressively and approached Tomoya in a threatening manner. In the next instant, the ferocious wolves attacked Tomoya again, but this time using magical abilities, and were able to inflict a seemingly invulnerable hero. Tomoya sensed that during such attacks, his amount of life is significantly reduced and once again used healing recovery. Isis explained that when health drops below 30%, the true battle race effect is activated and the total combat power increases to 380,000. Tomoya realized that his bad premonition was justified, and now the white and silver wolves had become much more aggressive. Meanwhile, an Imperial Knight Silver Fenrir of level 77 with a combat power of 7,000 was approaching the hero, with the beast possessing the ability of Great Calamity. The rest of the pack consisted of Silver Fenrir soldiers of level 50 with a combat power of over 3,000, with the ability of Madness. The howls of the Silver Wolf Emperor could also be heard in the distance, and it didn't promise anything good. The Silver Wolf Emperor himself was level 100 with a total combat power of 17,000. At the same time, the Emperor possessed the ability of Worst Omen. Tomoya decided that perhaps the Silver Wolves had the same curse on them as the dragons he had fought before. This time, the Silver Wolf Emperor didn't look the same as before, but he was noticeably overly aggressive, bordering on insanity. Tomoya asked the mighty beast if he was conscious and if they could just talk quietly. But the Silver Wolf Emperor declared that they were all cursed, and so Tomoya should send them to their eternal rest with his own hands. The guy didn't want to kill all the animals and asked if there was anything he could do to help and make all the wolves back to normal. But the Emperor said that Tomoya should not worry about it, because with such a curse they could not be brought back to normal, and so it was better for them to die. Furthermore, the Emperor confessed to committing a terrible sin, and so he himself no longer wants to live in this world. Tomoya felt all the animal pain he was feeling, and he felt truly sorry for the mighty Silver Wolf Emperor. The Great Wolf himself was struggling with the curse, and only through incredible efforts could still remain in normal consciousness. In the end, Tomoya agreed to fulfill the Emperor's request since he himself wanted to. Tomoya took the desperate step to send the Silver Wolves to rest. Isis additionally activated the Golden Battle Spirit to increase the total combat power by 5 times. Tomoya said he was ready, and the Emperor, still conscious, thanked the hero for his help. That was the last thing the mighty wolf leader had time to say before his consciousness completely left him, and he tried to pounce on Tomoya. The hero met the beast with a blow of his blade and ended the Emperor's suffering. The vile smell of fresh blood intensified in the air, and Tomoya, even despite the request of the Silver Wolf Emperor himself, sincerely regretted what he had done.